Hello and welcome into Trailblazer Yearly, a sports transition to Utah Tech. I'm Jacob Zimmerman.
And I'm Max Christensen.
Throughout the year, Max and I have taken the roles of covering Dixie State athletics for 91.3 The Blaze, our student-run radio station here on campus, and for Sun News Daily, our school's very own weekly television show. This year consisted of the last Dixie State sports seasons in program history under the name Dixie State.
That's right, Jacob. It was a last dance, if you will, and you and I took it upon ourselves to recognize and highlight Trailblazer athletics for the entire 2021-2022 school year.
A few years ago, the university made the announcement that it would be jumping from D2 to D1 competition to join the Western Athletic Conference. Since then, most of the teams have been under 1 or 2 full seasons since the transition and have been starting to make their mark in the WAC. Back at the beginning of the school year, Dixie State football kicked off their season September 3rd against Sacramento State. This 7-19 loss would start the trend of a tough season for the Trailblazers as they went on to face 7 ranked opponents in D1 FCS and finished with a 1-10 overall record. Even with the tough season, this year was by no means a wash, getting experience versus higher competition that sets the team up for greater success in the near future. There were also many bright spots the Trailblazers could point to in the next season. Head coach Paul Peterson's squad held number 25 Delaware to just 17 points in a game that was decided by just 1 touchdown, put up 62 points in a win against Fort Lewis, and added some big-time names in the offseason for the coaching staff. Keep in mind, DSU football had the number 1 toughest schedule in all of Division I FCS. Max, you were a part of the football team. What can you share with us about the season?
You know, it was a tough season. On paper, you see we went 1-10. You see that, we did have our struggles down the stretch. But like you said, it was a building season. What a great opportunity for us in our first season ever in Division I to play the toughest schedule in the country at our level, right? We played 11 games. 7 of the teams we played made the FCS playoff. Only 16 teams make the playoff, and almost half of them were on our schedule, right? You go and look at some of the things we did throughout the season. We go up and play South Dakota State. They're ranked number 2 in the country. After the first quarter, it's 0-0. So on the scoreboard, we're playing well. We go up to University of Montana, up in Missoula, right? They're coming off beating University of Washington, the Huskies, who were ranked number 20 in the country at that time when they beat them. It's 3-0 at halftime. So we did battle. We got worn out down the stretch. We don't have quite the depth yet that other teams have who we played, but we were able to battle. We had some great experiences. We had a lot of young guys who were able to step up, make plays for us as true freshmen, sophomores, so the program does have a very bright future. But overall, like you said, it wasn't a wash. We got some good experience. Coming into this next season, our schedule's not going to be any easier, but we think that we can be a little bit better than the 1-10 record we posted, even with a tough schedule.
You as a player, me as a commentator and a fan, and all of Trailblazer Nation is really excited for this next season as the first Utah Tech football squad. Over to the volleyball team, they started out their season facing elite competition in the Boise State Classic and the BYU Invitational. The team battled COVID early on, but once they got healthy and started WAC play, the wins began to pile up, winning 3-0 against Grand Canyon to start off conference play and finishing the season with back-to-back victories over Seattle U and California Baptist were some of their best moments of the year. The team finished with a 6-8 record in conference under Coach Hafoka in her first season as head coach. The Trailblazers finished with a winning record in games played at home in the Burns Arena as well. The men's basketball team here at Dixie State had a monumental year, starting off the season against the best team in all of the land in Gonzaga. They knew every game after that was certainly going to be easier. The game after that, they come home and play SUU and upset the rival Thunderbirds 83-76. Over 4,100 fans and students came to witness the victory. Towards the end of the season, the Trailblazers had 2 of their biggest wins in all of school history in the span of just 1 week. That's right, Dixie State knocked off last year's WAC champion Grand Canyon Lopes at home in WAC play in a 61-60 stunning thriller W. Both of us were on the call for this magical contest.
Yes.
Max, what were you thinking during that broadcast?
Man, it was a slugfest, right? 61-60, final score, not a lot of offense, but people were playing tough, and it was a grinder of a game. Like you said, you and I had the chance to be on the radio together for that game, right? It comes down to the wire, 20 seconds left, 15 seconds left. They throw the ball inside to the leader, Hunter Schofield,
Absolutely.
right? Just like the engine that kept that team going all year long. Gets the and one, makes the free throw, puts them up by one, right? And then great defense by Isaiah Pope coming down the stretch, prevents the three-pointer. They go on to win the game, right? It was a grinder of a matchup, but at that point, we were like, hey, this might be the best win in the young history of Division I basketball here at Dixie State, soon to be Utah Tech. That might have been the best win up to that point during the season.
I would probably have to agree with that. Shortly after, Dixie State actually hosted in-state rival UVU and also got a victory. And Max, in my opinion, the Trailblazers actually one-upped themselves, and here's why. They were down 7 points with 30 seconds left and ended up forcing overtime, and somehow, some way, the Trailblazers pulled off one of the greatest comebacks in all of collegiate sports history. The team finished with a season of 13 total wins, and 10 of those wins came right here in St. George. Dixie State women's basketball had an up-and-down ride over the winter. Not once, but twice this season. The girls actually put up 100-plus against both Life Pacific and Simpson. With Coach J.D. Gustin's offensive approach, the Trailblazers lived and died by the three, and in that process, they set school records in distance shooting. This team endured some crazy experiences, like having to exit the stadium mid-game due to a fire alarm being pulled at New Mexico State. That's right. Rounding out the season and getting their full team together, DSU had their best wins of the season with a 72-69 W against New Mexico State at home and an 81-77 win on the road against one of the best teams in all of the conference in California Baptist, including a 95-81 win against Abilene Christian. Max, what did you think of the Lady Trailblazers?
A very up and down season, kind of like you mentioned. They were able to plug in some different pieces there with Shanasia Davidson being able to come in, contribute big time. She was the energy, she was kind of the Hunter Schofield for the women's team, if you will. But yeah, it was a very up and down season. I remember putting a statistic together where it was kind of like there was a stretch where they would win by 1, 2, 3 points, and the very next night turn around and lose by at least 20. Right, there was 3 different times that happened during the season, and we saw that the starters logged a ton of minutes. J.D. Gustin had a lot of confidence in his starters. At one stretch, I think over a stretch of 6 or 7 games, 4 of the 5 starters averaged at least 40 minutes a game over 6 straight. So that can kind of wear on your legs a little bit. It was a kind of up and down season. But again, this transition has been a learning curve for everyone, not just players, but coaches as well. And I think Coach Gustin did a good job over the season, being able to manage the different girls. At one point they had 6 or 7 girls suit up for a game because they had COVID issues, and so just being able to manage not only the jump to Division I, but still having to deal with some COVID issues as well. I thought overall it was a good season, and there's so much room to improve for this ladies team.
And another mid-season change that they had to do, Shanasia Davison did come back mid-season. Brianna Gillen, who had kind of been the lead ball handler all year long, had to adjust to another player carrying the rock and the load offensively.
Yeah.
But they did a great job all mission together.
Yeah, no, they really did. And you look at a person like Emily Isaacson, right? Yeah. She led the WAC in 3-point field goals made. Right? I mean, again, first ever season in the WAC, and you have somebody from Dixie State, being in the upper echelon in their sport, that's pretty impressive.
Big time for the Lady Trailblazers. Speaking of Lady Trailblazers, the softball team recently just finished up their spring 2022 campaign with 8 conference wins and 13 total victories at home at Carl Brooks Field. Coach Randy Simpkins' Sluggers held strong when facing Utah schools, going 8-4 against in-state rivals like Utah State, SUU, UVU, and even BYU. Despite a few cold streaks from the team, these girls gave the WAC's top team, Grand Canyon, 2 of their 5 total conference losses, snatching that series on the road in Phoenix and having one of those games be a mercy rule win certainly had to make head coach Randy Simpkins happy. And not only that, but the Trailblazers had a .313 batting average as an entire team throughout the whole season. Max, these girls are legit, huh?
Yes. They are, and I just have to tip my hat to them and baseball as well. We will get into in a second, but look at their non-conference schedule that they lined up and played. I know you and I have talked about this before, right? Ole Miss, Cal, Wisconsin, the Badgers came to St. George and played the Lady Trailblazers, and they only lost 12-7, right? They suited up against Utah State, UNLV, University of Nevada, and you look at some of those games too. Against UNLV, they won one of those games in 5 innings, 8-0. Against University of Nevada, won that game in 5 innings, 8-0. So against big competition, they were very, very impressive. Whether it was at home, on the road, the different things they were able to do, shuffle some lineups, had some players make all WAC teams and things like that, and it was just a very impressive season overall by the softball team.
The baseball team makes up the final group of student athletes to go out and compete with the name Dixie State across the chest. Even with their season not officially over as we speak at the time of this newscast, the team's success can still be acknowledged. The boys currently sit at a 12-15 WAC record and will finish the year 500 at Bruce Hurst Field. The main trend this season with the team is that they played up to the level of competitions multiple times. Chris Phaetonhour's Trailblazers upset BYU 7-5 back in April, took the 10th-ranked team in all of the country in the Arizona Wildcats to extra innings early in the season, and perhaps had their most impressive game of all in their last W, 9-4 over the Utah Utes. That was their last home game, getting revenge from a loss they had to them earlier this season. Max, when we talk about the Utah Utes, how big of a win was that?
Huge. Massive. It was immense. And I'll tell you why. Because not only is it, an in-state rivalry now, again, with Dixie State being another Division I baseball team here in the state of Utah, recruiting. That's a huge deal now. I've mentioned this before when it comes to, again, the teams that are in the WAC, but Utah, BYU, and you look down the road down in Vegas with UNLV, those are 3 big teams who Dixie State now has to compete with when it comes to getting Division I recruits. And I love the resiliency of this team here, right? You look at they went up to Salt Lake and played the Utes, lost 12-1, right? And after being up 1-0, gave up 12 straight runs. So to come back, come home, settle in, and beat them 9-4, very impressive. Split the season series with BYU, that's very impressive. And so you look at their non-conference schedule. You mentioned it. The most impressive game of the year might have been going to number 10 Arizona in extra innings and losing 2-1. They had a chance to beat a top 10 team in the country. They played Arizona State. They played a couple other teams. So again, their non-conference schedule was big time, but the biggest part of the year was splitting those series with BYU, with Utah, because that shows, hey, we can compete with the best teams and the biggest teams in this state. So why not come down to sunny St. George and play baseball?
And speaking of sunny St. George, I think you just hit it right on the head. In baseball, they're playing outside. They're not indoors like basketball. You're familiar with this being on the football field. Yeah. It is, and you can allude to this as well, it's such an advantage from the recruiting standpoint being in a warm weather town like St. George 100%. As opposed to going up to Salt Lake, going up to Provo. You think in the years to come we'll be able to get some big-time recruits for that reason?
Yes, I do. And I think across every sport. You look at SUU joining the WAC this coming fall in every sport. You think about it, with all the outside sports, softball, baseball, football, track and field, whatever it may be, right? Would you rather live in St. George and have about 255 days of sunshine and bright skies and warm weather, especially when it comes into the colder months? Or would you rather go, 50 minutes up the road where it can snow on you at any time, right? So I think especially when it comes to the rivalry that will now be created, we already had a little rivalry with SUU, but now we're both Division I, we're both in the same conference. I think that will be a huge battle for recruits, and one big thing that every coach at Utah Tech will be able to pitch is, hey, better weather. You get to play in better weather down here for a longer stretch during the season. I think that will be huge.
Yeah, there's a reason me and Max both decided to come to Dixie State. On these Trailblazer athletic squads, a few athletes just seem to shine above the rest and capture attention from all around the conference. Here are some athletes who won awards in the WAC. Starting with volleyball, freshman Kate Hardy, middle blocker, earned a spot on the all-WAC second team as the WAC all-freshman team as well. For football, freshman linebacker Will Leota and redshirt freshman DB Tyrell Grayson both made the all-WAC second team. Over to women's soccer, senior defender Tess Donaldson made the second team all-WAC. In men's basketball, senior Hunter Schofield earned a spot on the first team all-WAC. In women's basketball, redshirt sophomore Emily Isaacson got onto the second team all-WAC, and senior Shanasia Davison was awarded a spot on the WAC newcomer team. And rounded it out with softball, junior first baseman Hannah Eubanks won WAC Defensive Player of the Year, got the first team all-WAC, and was also WAC all-defensive team. Junior slugger Shay Clemens also made first team, and freshman second baseman Carly Eldridge got the nod for second team.
As these seasons came to an end, it was also unfortunately the end to a career for some of our fantastic athletes here in St. George. For every athlete, it eventually comes time to hang it up, but the impact they have will not be forgotten. Here are the seniors that played a huge part in Trailblazer athletics throughout the last couple years.
Here in Southern Utah, the name change has been a controversial topic throughout the school year. As I graduated from Dixie State this year in the class of 2022, I enjoyed the idea speaker Carly Fiorina had to share with the graduates. The name Dixie has a different meaning to everyone. Even with the name of Dixie State coming to a death and Utah Tech beginning its birth, there is one thing we can all agree upon. We are all Trailblazers.
We thought we would ask these student athletes what being a Trailblazer means to them.
Being a Trailblazer means a lot to me. With the knowledge of what the Trailblazer actually means is creating those paths that haven't been created yet, and taking part of that and being part of that, you know, how our coaches have explained it to us and our professors and our president of the universities is changing the culture of what we're trying to do here and blazing those new trails, and we are on the rise. And being able to put that name across my chest and run out on Saturdays and represent a team with this kind of caliber and willing to blaze those new trails as Trailblazers is something you can't ask for anything different. And having the support of the community as you wear that Trailblazer across your chest as well, even on your t-shirts, has been an amazing experience in itself. And so it means a ton to be a Trailblazer and represent this university.
Being a Trailblazer to me means that you are willing to take new paths that are going to help you grow, that are outside of your comfort zone, and do it fearlessly. Playing volleyball here at this school has really helped me to learn how to do that, and having a coaching environment and a team that pushes me to become better, but also to do things that this school hasn't done yet before in this program, and been able to learn a lot about myself and have others help me along the way.
A Trailblazer is a pioneer. A Trailblazer is an innovator, a person who paves their own way. All of these student athletes have traveled different ways of life, have overcome different obstacles, and have created their own individual paths to arrive at this success. All, of course, blazing a trail together to team victory. For some of our fellow Trailblazers, it is the end of their sports collegiate road, and for other competitions will await later in life. For others, the off-season has already begun in search of a great season now as Utah Tech.